You're listening to the Monocle Daily, first broadcast on the 17th of February 2025 on Monocle Radio.
It's 2100 in Riyadh, 2000 in Cairo, 1800 here in London and 1500 in Buenos Aires. That's the time on Monocle Radio, brought to you by Chanel Watches. Does the looming US-Russia summit in Riyadh inaugurate a new era of transactional diplomacy? Will Egypt's ideas about the future of Gaza perhaps be more plausible than Donald Trump's? And the Portuguese resort, which has seen more than enough of its tourists. I'm Andrew Muller. The Monocle Daily starts now. Hello and welcome to the Monocle Daily, coming to you from our studios here at Midori House in London. I'm Andrew Muller. My guests Daniela Peled and Theo Usherwood will discuss the day's big stories, and we'll hear from LinkedIn Senior Vice President Blake Lawit, one of Monocle's guests at the recent World Government Summit in Dubai. Stay tuned, all that and more coming up right here on the Monocle Daily. This is the Monocle Daily. I'm Andrew Muller, and I am joined today by Daniela Peled, Managing Editor of the Institute for War and Peace Reporting, and by Theo Usherwood, the political journalist and broadcaster. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Daniela, regular listeners, like there are any other kind and so forth, will be agog to hear which local history museum, obscurantist, weird, strange, eccentric you have recently visited or are about to visit. Have you got anything for us?
I'm afraid I've let you down. I've let my family down. I've let the regular visitors down. My week has not been marked by any trips to local history museums. I would say mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, but that would be perhaps distasteful given the current state of papal health.
Well, indeed so. But why have you not been? I mean, have you been working or something?
Well, a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
let's not go into details. But yeah, I've let it down. But I'm our next appearance, I guarantee you that I will have been to either the Butter Museum, the Salt Museum, or Orphan Museum, some museum of local history. It's a promise.
OK, well, we look forward to that. Theo, are you able to clear that admittedly low bar in light introductory banter that Daniela has established?
I've not been to any museums. I have been to IKEA in Greenwich at the weekend.
I mean, is that sort of a local history museum?
I mean, I'd quite like it if it was a museum. It was confined to history. No. There is a perfectly good furniture shop. But yeah, no. I was trying to navigate and you go on and it goes on and on and on. And I'm actually surprised I'm here. I went in there on Sunday morning. It could be perfectly possible I could be lost in IKEA, just continuing. Is it the Market Hall?
Oh, I love
the Market Hall with the soft furnishings. I could quite easily be lost there.
Well, fortunately, you are not. No. You are, in fact, here. You got out alive. Well done. And we will look first at Riyadh, where talks are due tomorrow between representatives of the United States and Russia over the future of Ukraine. And if it seems like one key party has been omitted from the guest list, Ukraine doubtless agrees with you. Ukraine's views on the subject of Ukraine's future are, however, being considered today in Paris at the emergency meeting of European leaders called by French President Emmanuel Macron after US Vice President J.D. Vance conspicuously declined to charm or reassure fellow attendees of the Munich Security Conference this past weekend. Theo, first of all, this is an insight I am shamelessly stealing from one of the people I spoke to at the Munich Security Conference, who pointed out that, 10, 20, 30 years ago, certainly, a conference like this would have happened in Geneva, not Riyadh. So what does that tell us?
It tells us that Europe's being sidelined. It tells us that this hastily convened emergency summit in Paris is nothing more than a talking shop. The real business is being done in Riyadh. Reportedly, $600 billion was offered to an investment was offered by Mohammed bin Salman in return for holding it in Riyadh. But really, it's about putting the investment to one side of it. It's just about how it looks, and increasingly. It looks as if Europe is just sidelined. I noted. I was speaking to one of the number of UK political journalists speaking at the lobby briefing and asking questions of Number 10 spokesman, and they said the line they increasingly come up with these. And I know we're not supposed to be If you're in the club, you're not supposed to be rude about the club. But they increasingly come up with these sort of meaningless statements. Do you remember sort of almost as if like Theresa May when her spokesman said Brexit means Brexit? And yes, but what is Brexit? But it's like Ukraine needs to be at the heart of any discussions about Ukraine. OK, so why isn't President Zelensky there? Well, President Zelensky will be there, we're told, on Wednesday. 2 days, day 3 of this summit, when basically a fait accompli is going to be offered to Zelensky and he's got to accept it. And if I have an insight into the snapshot that is, the Keir Starmer, the number 10, the platitudes that they're now just putting out, then that, I'm sure, is a story that is replicated in Paris and in Berlin, in Spain, in Madrid as well. Europe is on the back foot. This is a deal being done without Europe. And now, of course, it feels like Trump and Putin, through their intermediaries, are just going to go and carve up Ukraine whichever way they like.
I mean, it is an intriguing, is one word for it, subplot of this, Daniela, that Saudi Arabia got this summit by promising to invest a large sum of money in the United States. They apparently actually outbid the UAE, who do now seem to have the consolation prize of President Zelensky, who is on his way there or actually there. It's almost like Donald Trump has returned to one of his previous occupations of proprietor of Miss World. I mean, is this the future? Is he just going to farm out important diplomatic summits to whoever coughs up the most?
Well, I think diplomacy has always been quite transactional, really. I mean, we might like to think back to this era of very, responsible and very serious-minded conferences where the great and the good thought wasn't the best of the world. But yeah, that's not actually how it works. We could call it soft power, just expensive soft power, really. And I think Zelensky just happened to be planning to go to Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure he's even invited to the conference. It would certainly be a bad look for him if he turned up. No, I would like to. I'm a European, and I think we're, as a continent, even though post Brexit we are important, we play important games. But this is not the first time Europe has been sideline. And we're going to be talking about the Middle East shortly. Mm-hmm. And again, if we're talking about peace deals in the Middle East, it was also Israel has always been involved when it comes to Israeli interests. But certainly the Europeans would have loved a seat at that table. The Europeans were expected to pay for two-state solution, pay for reconstruction of Gaza in the past. And I think this is the similar vibe now. The Europeans are expected, and indeed will, support reconstruction. And again, talking about supporting any post-war security agreement. The fact that the Europeans have been sidelined now, I think, is not so much of a surprise because we've failed to be unified at any point through this process. Perhaps it's asking a bit much for a 27-member group to have a unified foreign policy, but no one really agreed. It was, let's hand out a few, let's do a bit of support when it comes to weapons, let's accept some refugees, but let's not really, really agree about our approach towards Russia because Europe has these very, very different interests. So I think any idea of European unity was a fiction, although perhaps I'm being naive, but I was quite surprised just by how rude Hungary was over this particular summit. They made it very, very clear, we are pro-peace, unlike the rest of Europe.
On which subject, Theo, this summit occurring today, more than one person I spoke to at Munich said this, especially if that person happened to come from the Baltic states or one of the Eastern European frontline states. When you ask them, is this Europe related, reacting to this wake-up call, the response we always got was, how many more wake-up calls are these people going to need? If you go back to Russia invading Georgia in 2008, attacking Ukraine in 2014, Trump being elected the first time in 2016, do we have any greater reason to believe than we previously have that this time Europe is serious?
I'm much more pessimistic than that. I'm from what I've picked up in government, from what we hear coming out of from Paris and over the last few weeks, and especially actually just the last week with the statements that came from Hegseth at the end of last week, the Defence Secretary in Washington, is actually Europe's on its own now. And not only that, if you look at the cast list for this meeting, this summit in Paris, it doesn't include Hungary, it doesn't include Slovakia, it doesn't include Slovenia. It is a much smaller cast of characters than the EU 27. And the problem with that is that we're now finding ourselves juxtaposed, in a confrontation with Russia without being united and without the support of the United States willing to back it up. And I think it feels like, people talk about Chamberlain and people talk about appeasement. I don't think we've got any other, if you look at Europe, I don't think they've got any real, there are no real options apart from allowing it to play out and allowing that summit in Riyadh to play out. And one would presume at a point in the not too distant future, Vladimir Putin is going to come back for more. Mm-hmm. We were talking about it, and I was talking about it with one of my colleagues this evening about this parliamentary vote, about whether and number 10 declined to say whether we would get MPs in the British Parliament would get a parliamentary vote on putting British troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Which is something Sir Keir Starmer has said might be a possibility.
Well, he said actually it was what he was elected on back when he was elected leader of the Labour Party, was he said all military action should be a parliamentary vote. What's interesting about it is if you look at Lib Dems would support military troops on the ground. If Starmer puts troops on the ground, he would obviously support troops on the ground, huge majority. You would presume that the Conservatives would as well. It feels like it's obvious that we're going to put troops on the ground and then rely on Donald Trump, should we find ourselves in some sort of hybrid warfare situation with the Russians, to actually back our own troops. It feels like a really perilous moment where we would turn around to Trump and to Washington and say, hang on a moment, we've just had a mortar attack, or we've just had these skirmishes with these troops. Will you back us up with air cover? And I don't think there's any guarantee that in that situation Donald Trump would.
And that is one of the things, Daniela, that people were scratching their heads a bit about at Munich, because this idea has been floated before of European countries getting involved in this unilaterally, maybe not under NATO protection or maybe not under the aegis of NATO. So it's been posited that Poland might send troops to Ukraine, or France might, or the United Kingdom might. The question then arises, if a NATO member unilaterally sends its own troops to Ukraine, are they covered by Article 5 if they are targeted by Russians?
The thing is, we are in uncharted territory here. Europeans are scrambling rather belatedly to realise that they need their own security policy. And if not a united one, they need one where perhaps America is not the reliable vector that they once thought. I mean, the fact that Macron called this conference is as an example of sort of how lost we've been, because he keeps on doing this, right? Mm-hmm. He keeps on doing this, right? Okay, I am the new Angela Merkel. I am I'm the statesman, the foreign policy statesman of Europe. And he keeps on doing it. People play along, but he really has no achievements to show for it. He doesn't even have any statesman-like achievements to show for it at home at the moment. I think inevitably, when we talk about hybrid war with Russia, we are already kind of engaged in a hybrid war. This is ongoing. I think that the European Union, we are, as Theo said, there are little different caucuses here and little fragmentary alliances that are looking after their own interests. And there is no longer, if there ever was, I guess there was in the halcyon days, a unified, overarching interest of European security and economic policy.
Well, let's look now at Gaza. And since the presently dormant war between Israel and Hamas began in October 2023, there has been a marked absence of discussion of what will become of Gaza once hostilities are completely ceased. A reflection, perhaps, of the reality that this is something that everyone hopes someone else will deal with. The most charitable possible interpretation of US President Donald Trump's fevered dreams of an ethnically cleansed Atlantic city on the Mediterranean is that he hoped to jolt any better their ideas out of people. He appears to have elicited a response from Egypt, which is preparing a plan of its own. Daniela, do we understand much of what the Egyptians' plan is? I'm assuming it differs fairly fundamentally from President Trump's in several important respects.
Well, the Egyptians find themselves under huge pressure, not least because President Trump has made it clear that, and as is true, they receive an enormous amount of US aid. So he wants some response from that. The Egyptians do not want to accept numerous refugees from Gaza, even if it's not a complete resettlement. I mean, let's not forget that Gaza has a de facto border with Egypt as well as with Israel. And Egypt has been enforcing that border, as strictly and with... It
is often forgotten that two countries are blockading Gaza.
Yeah, but Egypt is doing it in league with Israel. It's not they have a similar policy. And even during the era when Mohammed Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood, was ruling Egypt, it wasn't a great sort of time for Gaza as well. So Egypt has got to work out its own approach to this. And by being proactive, maybe they will avoid having the solution dumped on them. I mean, right from the beginning, no one has been talking about the day after in Gaza. You're right. It's just too difficult. It's too complicated. The only thing that seems to be practically on the table or practical possibility would be a technocratic government. Hamas has expressed support for that. The Europeans have been talking about allowing the Palestinian Authority, which has more or less rule over more or less bits of the West Bank, to come in. We have a fly in the ointment here, which is Netanyahu, who not only really doesn't want a solution, but he's made it clear more recently that he does not want the PA, that he sees the PA as another terror organisation. I mean, you say that Trump's idea of resettling Palestinians from Gaza is sort of very out there, but there has always been a very strong, if very marginal view amongst the Israeli right that the Palestinians don't exist as a people, as a nation. And actually, Jordan is really Palestine. There's loads of Palestinians there. They can move there.
The Jordanians beg to differ, obviously.
Everyone begs to differ, but this is, well, almost everyone. But there is a significant minority that has always thought that, and it's a kind of fantasy, a sort of somewhat racist fantasy of the Israeli right, that would mean that the issue disappeared without anything so bothersome as diplomacy. Now, the issue is now virtually mainstream policy. It has become, it's acceptable to talk about it. Netanyahu is really quite excited about it. So in the absence of another workable scenario, in the absence of a roadmap, I mean, no one is even really talking about two-state solution anymore. It was briefly revived during the war, and now it's back off the table. So this is the game in town.
One of the ideas of the Egyptians, Theo, that has been telegraphed is that Hamas will not be involved in any future governance of Gaza. They're being a bit coy about what that then does mean for Hamas's military wing. But are Hamas likely to acquiesce to that, or do they perhaps at this point, after this catastrophic war that they have brought down upon Gaza, understand that we really don't have a lot of choice?
I think the problem is that they would, you could take the view that Hamas it starts and stops with Hamas. That Hamas is the blocker, and that if you take Hamas out of Gaza, and you could replace it, I suppose, with the Palestinian Authority, but a PA or whatever. But there would be a view that from Netanyahu that he views them in the same light and bring them over from the West Bank. But actually, it doesn't start and stop with Hamas. It starts and stops with. If it starts and stops with anything, with what happened on October the 7th from the Israeli point of view. And what I mean by that is that how do you solve this riddle of creating, of ensuring that we don't just go back and do a rerun of the past 18 months and have a sovereign Palestinian state? Because as soon as you start talking, and this is about a sovereign Palestinian state, then you're talking about a police force. You're talking about an army of sorts. And the problem is from the Israeli side is that they are not going to allow that to happen. And so what Trump has done, and I'm not wise enough to understand the inner workings of Donald Trump's mind. but what he's done is he's come up with this big fanciful idea of the Riviera with Mar-a-Lago on the coast, on the shores of, replacing Gaza. And is that a tactic to say, okay, you need to come back, Iran needs to come back to the table with something more workable, more feasible, which doesn't involve, it involves some sort of get around where there isn't an independent Palestinian state. And how is that managed and how does that work? Or is he really serious? Is he actually saying, we just want to bulldoze the whole thing? I mean, the pictures coming out now are just horrendous, right? Mm-hmm. It's just rubble. Is he seriously just bulldoze the whole thing and we allow Netanyahu, and as you were saying, the sort of the right wing just to become the mainstream, and they're just allowed under the guise of Donald Trump just to go for it and to develop it? And I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not even pretending to know the answer to that question, whether it's some big negotiating ruse, or whether actually Trump's serious.
Just a final thought on this one, Daniela, and following up on something Theo said, that the thing is always going to be, is it not, that whatever happens in the short term, the rebuilding of Gaza, the long term, perhaps some sort of Palestinian state, it is all going to have to be something that Israel will agree to. You don't have to like that fact or agree with that fact or think that fact is fair, but that is the case, which does mean that somebody is going to have to administrate Gaza and do it to a degree that Israel is comfortable with. And do we have any idea who is going to volunteer to do that?
Look, Israel is not going to be comfortable with it. We're talking about perception here rather than actual facts. Mm-hmm. The West Bank has been remarkably stable over the last decade or so. There have been outbreaks of violence, which one would not be surprised about at all. But the PA has very little legitimacy in the eyes of Palestinians because it's effectively been acting as Israel's policeman in the West Bank. It's, and that's but Israel, the perception amongst Israelis is that it's extremely dangerous. There's huge amounts of terror. The whole thing is a terror infrastructure, But reality does not support that. In the same way that Hamas administered Gaza for 17, 18 years, and without legitimizing them at all, but they ran services, they ran the police, they ran the health, the health services, and so on. It wasn't absolute chaos. They also kept the peace a lot for Israel as well. They also policed other groups and stopping them on numerous occasions from firing rockets in Israel. There are jihadists that are much more extreme, or they were, in Gaza than Hamas. I cannot think of a conflict that's been resolved in modern times where the armed wing, the terrorist organisations, have not transformed into a political organisation. Israel's refusal to accept this is going to be quite difficult, but there is not going to be an outcome that is wholly acceptable to Israel. But that's how wars end. They end with compromises.
Well, to Argentina now, which presently has in common with another country one might name of an unorthodox president given to eccentric pronouncements and gripped by a fascination with cryptocurrency, but which differs from that other country one might name in still having a justice apparatus at least vaguely interested in upholding the law. President Javier Milei of Argentina may find himself on the hook for fraud charges after promoting a cryptocurrency whose value, can we shock you, swiftly crashed, bereaving investors. Although, as usual with such stories, it is amazing that these people had not previously lost all their savings to the wallet inspector. Theo, are you consumed with sympathy for the practices known as rugging, short for rug pull, i.e. you build something up, you sell out presumably when it looks like it's peaked, and then all the other mugs who piled in afterwards get left holding the bag?
Yes, so what's interesting about this story, I couldn't quite believe it when I read it, but it seems to be that they've used Milei they've used him as the sort of the big salesman to say, this is such a great Libra cryptocurrency. Something
of that ilk, yes. Yeah, we do not endorse or recommend it to our listeners, although you'd get it pretty cheap now.
Yeah. This is what you need to be investing in. This, You get the president to endorse the product. Everybody goes and invests in the cryptocurrency, and then the investors just disappear with everybody's money. Yeah, I just find that extraordinary. that they've got the president. I mean, you might think you might get a former footballer, or you might get
I'd be
a celebrity, a celebrity or a radio host to come and
reasonable rates if anybody's listening,
to come and endorse it. But you've managed to get the president to endorse it. I think that's a.
We saw Donald Trump do this. We saw Melania Trump do this, and the thing that baffles me, of the many things that baffle me about this, Daniela, is the political unwisdom of doing this. Because if you are a politician who affixes their name, image, endorsement to a cryptocurrency, the people who will pile into that and will be bankrupted by it are by definition your voters, and I'm not sure they're going to come back for more.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the whole cryptocurrency, like right-wing, left-wing thing is kind of baffling as well, because it's, sorry to say this, guys, the young people that are mostly into cryptocurrency, they tend to be a bit more...
Careful.
A bit more left-leaning, maybe. But I think...
I thought you were going with haplessly gullible there, so fine.
Radiantly attractive.
Exactly.
But there is definitely this whole like right-wing image to cryptocurrency, and perhaps not unreasonably. And it is quite a good look for these more libertarian politicians to say, look, this is great. This is the Wild West. Let's get into it, because it does support their idea of, well, libertarianism, really. It's unregulated. It's unwoke. So, and it's risky as well. But hey, that's how that's how the cards fall. So I'm not sure it is a bad look, really.
Is it fraud, or is it? When I read this story, this is just straight up fraud. This isn't risky. This isn't some sort of fanciful sort of dream that you can buy into. I mean, it's just a fraud. This is the accusation.
That's basically the accusation.
It's not that Milei has, he's come in and gone, look, hey guys, I'm on the coattails here of Donald Trump, and I'm going to promote something like, obviously Bitcoin or whatever in the United States. I'm going to promote something the allegation is that he's just committed a fraud, that he's been a key player in this, in pushing this currency and saying this is fantastic, only for his associates. I think that was the accusation. Now, of course, I'm sure the Argentinian president disputes this, but then to disappear with everybody's money. I mean, there's no dream sold with that. I think with Bitcoin, unless I'm corrected, Bitcoin isn't a fraud. I mean, it's risky. You can lose a lot of money very quickly. You can also make a lot of money very quickly, but it's a legitimate. It's a currency.
It is. I mean, it is. There are jurisdictions in which you can buy stuff and sell stuff through the medium of Bitcoin. Yes. It
exists. Whereas this is like going down to Del Boy's cars and buying a car and then not being able to drive it off the forecourt. I mean, it's just a scam.
You'd have to be able to prove that first, and there's quite a gap in this sort of bold statement and the court process. And I think Javier Milei feels quite confident to make those kinds of bold moves.
Well, we will move along to Portugal, the people of one jurisdiction of which have apparently tired during the summer months of shielding their eyes from the spectacle of British tourists dressing in hot weather as British people in hot weather tend to, no offence, etc. Any sun seekers in Albufeira who wander off the beach in a bikini or without a shirt may now find themselves stung for up to €1,500. Albufeira is not the first European locale to have passed similar laws, and in common with all the others is barely bothering to disguise which specific nationality of tourists is causing the issue. Theo, what is wrong with you people?
Thank you. I'm sort of slightly questioning. I'm going to stick up for the British tourist.
Can I? Go ahead.
You can try.
I'm going to stick up for the British tourist. Look, it's very rare to get sunshine in this country, in Britain. We go on holiday primarily to get sunshine and to get some vitamin D. And I would have thought that if you're in Albufeira, like if you're in anywhere else in the Costa del Sol, you're I don't want to sound. I know how this is sound. It's one of these things I actually said in front of the mirror before I thought I'm going to come and say it on the radio. But actually, suck it up, Buttercup. we get tourists coming over there. You make a lot of money.
This has been the motto of the British abroad for several centuries.
We support your local industry. You charge handsomely for your hotels and drinking establishments, and you make a lot of money. And if you if we want to walk around with our bellies out or whatever, then I think we should be allowed to.
And at least you've stopped teaching them to play cricket at gunpoint.
Yeah. I mean, Theo, do you know how little sunshine there is in, for instance, Iceland?
Yeah.
And you don't get hordes of Icelandic tourists rampaging through Albufeira. Obviously, again, it's another kind of sport. Middle class English people going, or look at those working class English people. They're so red and so topless.
See, I feel obviously entitled to take the high road on this because my people, Australians, are just famously decorous, courteous, well-mannered tourists wherever they travel in the world. Everybody loves us, especially in New Zealand. That has been my experience.
Exactly. So you speak from a good platform, but no, I get it. That we go a bit too far. I mean, like using a collective we, because I'm not one of those red-faced, topless English tourists. But, I think, I'd also do sort of smell PR opportunity here,
Well, they're going for a slightly more refined British tourist.
I mean, I
we're
think
going to impose some rules and then we can up our rates.
I think so. My brother lives in Cornwall, and for instance, in Cornwall, as a microcosm of this, they're always banging on about the people who come and stay in caravan parks and do low-level tourism because they want Cornwall to be. Actually, if I say the Riviera, I'm not talking about Gaza now. But yeah, they bring in the money, they bring in the dollars, but at the same time, they want the classier tourist dollars. Sorry, guys, there is this snobbish element amongst holiday resorts and, holiday PRing. And, people just want to have fun.
But is there not in Australia, I will admit that there used to be many years ago, I can remember a plague of people wandering around with no shirts on, just like that was a normal thing to do. Repeated decades of public awareness campaigns about skin cancer. And in fact, people getting skin cancer has largely cured Australians of the desire to wander around without a shirt on. But that aside, Theo, can we not at least agree as a general principle, this applies to about 99% of male humanity? Nobody wants to see that. Put a shirt on.
You could do, but I just think, I'm just going to defend I'm going to stick to my guns. You're inviting me to retract or do a reverse ferret on what I've said previously. I think it's 2 weeks a year. People go for, they go abroad. I always think that those destinations where you see where people don't put shirts on, and having travelled to a few, they're slightly more relaxed, and it's just an easier holiday because you don't have to worry about any decorum, or you can wander in. And I think that's a good thing. It just makes it easier.
Theo Usherwood and Daniela Pellard, thank you for joining us. Finally on today's show, last week a contingent of impeccably dressed Monocle staffers were at the World Government Summit in Dubai, meeting global leaders and listening in on the big themes shaping conversations in politics, technology and economics. At the event, Monocle's editor-in-chief Andrew Tuck and Monocle's head of radio Tom Edwards were joined in our pop-up studio by Blake Lowett, Senior Vice President and General Counsel at the business-focused social media giant LinkedIn. To find out more about the importance of building and maintaining a network, Tom started by asking Blake what LinkedIn does for its customers.
What I've seen over the years is that it is a way to create opportunity for people. LinkedIn is really all about trying to create economic opportunity for as many people as possible, every worker across the globe if possible. And the way that you do that is by developing your skills, reaching out to other people who have shared professional interests and connecting with them, learning, hopefully reaching out and getting new opportunities, whether it's business or job or any of those things. And your professional network on LinkedIn is just this amazing tool, if done well, to help you connect you to things and opportunities that you could never know that you'd have if you didn't have this tool where you all of a sudden are connected to all these people who you didn't know are connected to other people can help you.
And just tell me, you've been through the changing nature of work in lots of different ways. You took people through COVID. There was the debates about whether people should be working in the office and at home. And now we're here in Dubai at a moment when lots of people are talking about the impact of AI and what it's going to do to, again, people's working lives and where they'll find sustenance from their work and where they'll find it a bit more abrasive maybe because some of the things that they love doing will be taken away from them. How important is that debate, and how you as a company navigating it yourselves, the arrival of AI?
Well, two different questions. I'll deal with the company part first. First, AI is not something new for us as a company. Even before you have this sort of fashionable new Gen AI, which is sort of producing like content that people see, there was good old-fashioned AI 1.0, which was basically machine learning and relevancy. So in other words, we're a huge online platform where people are coming on, and what we really are is a set of marketplaces, really. To some extent, we're a talent marketplace, right? Somebody's a job seeker and somebody is a job poster. We have to figure out how to match the best opportunity that the person is seeking for with the best fit for the job that they can have. That's an AI problem. So we've had, over the years, we've been an AI first company for a long time. But what we see now is that it's changing in both with the development of Gen AI, we can have new applications on the platform. And even more importantly, like you say, it's going to affect people's individual lives in a very important way.
And then tell me how you're helping your audience, your members, how you're engaging with them as they begin to see how AI is going to change their lives.
Well, I think that, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to help people visualize it. So if you think about any job, honestly, can be looked at as a set of tasks to be done, not just a job title. People tend to think of it as a job title. I am engineer, I am lawyer, but what it actually is here are a bunch of skills that I have and tasks that need to be done. I have the skills to accomplish the tasks. Some of those tasks are going to be ones that, with this new, more powerful form of AI, are going to get easily replaced by those. So there might be certain jobs that really specialize in that, like certain types of easy content generation. So it could be like customer service representative, very heavily indexed in that. There's going to be a second set of tasks that will be involved, like actually getting good at using these tools. These tools will not just be about automation. They'll also be, we hope and expect, a way to generate creativity, innovation, productivity. And so there's a whole set of, in lots of jobs, I can actually get a lot better at my job if I use these AI tools for that purpose. And then the third really crucial bucket of set of tasks are what I call tasks around human skills, right? We are a professional relationship and we understand the value of professional relationship. There's going to be some things the bots just can't replace. There's going to be some things that are just uniquely human, things like skills that involve leadership, communication, adaptability, emotional intelligence. Even after the bots do some tasks and there's going to be decision-making, things to be done, and success of individuals, organizations, and frankly, countries that develop those individuals and organizations well, the ones that are going to win are going to be the ones that really can succeed and thrive in a relationship economy. Because the humans aren't going away. We're still going to be here at the end of this.
Blake, it's interesting to me as someone who sort of grew up in the 90s, early phase internet, certainly didn't have any of these social networks. Mm-hmm. Do you think we missed
so before
something?
Or after Oasis?
Kind of, well, that's sort of during, I guess.
Okay, during. Okay.
But I wonder, in terms of those human qualities, the soft skills, the networking, when you had to put your foot in it or, people would kind of rub up against each other, literally or metaphorically, and you'd learn things about one another. Is there a risk that these systems, the models, get so good that we do lose a little bit of those necessary tensions and misunderstandings? Because we don't want a perfect solution. Do we risk not refining those because we've got all these amazing tools at our disposal?
Sure. Yeah. But here's the thing. People, at some point, we get into the WALL-E question, right? Which is, there's the movie WALL-E at Pixar, and there's this avatar of the humans who kind of get very lazy, and they're going around these motorized chairs, and they're sipping sodas, and they kind of forget how to do everything. That's that question. I don't think so. The image that comes to me more from that movie is from the beginning of the movie. There's a beautiful, beautiful scene where Wall-E, the robot, who's going through the trash, and he falls in love with this robot, Eve. But beyond that, the part that I really always love about that movie is when he's sort of projecting the Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire dance, right? This robot has this humanity to it, and I think we're a little bit more Fred and Ginger than we are the guys riding around on the chairs. Maybe it's a weird form of optimism. This is where we are now, but there's something that calls to us, and that is just so innately human that we want to be Fred and Ginger. That inspiration isn't going away. And I think that we're going to continue to push and challenge ourselves in different ways, even as the technology changes and the context changes. It's too much of who we are.
That was Blake Lloyd, Senior Vice President and General Counsel at LinkedIn, speaking to Monocle's Editor-in-Chief Andrew Tuck and our Head of Radio Tom Edwards at the World Government Summit in Dubai. And that is all for this edition of the Monocle Daily. Thanks to our panellists today, Daniela Peled and Theo Usherwood. The show was produced by Monica Lillis and researched by Maisie Ringer. Our sound engineer was Flynn Simons. I'm Andrew Muller here in London. The Daily returns at the same time tomorrow. Thanks for listening.